13th of July 2005, approximately 3 p.m. Interviewers are Wayne Clark and Mike Russert. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
My name is Emily Bailey Riggs, and my date of birth is 6/17/18, Washington, D.C.
Okay. What was your educational background prior to entering service?
I had done master's work, but not gotten a master's in physical chemistry at George Washington University.
Okay. Do you remember where you were and how you heard about Pearl Harbor?
Yes, I heard about it on the radio when it was happening. I was home in Washington.
Do you remember your reaction when you heard that news?
I wanted to hear more. I mean, my reaction was, let's get the whole story, because then they didn't have the quick.
The news like they have today,
Right.
yes.
So,
Okay. Did you enlisted? Why did you decide to enlist?
well, it seemed to me that everything was. It was an interesting thing to do, and I was tired of testing road materials, and I thought, well, I'll go in the Navy and see what that offers me. So when I had a chance to go in as an officer and go directly to officer school, I did that.
Okay. Why did you select the Navy for any special reason rather than one of the other branches?
Well, the main reason probably was because I had dated a lot of people at the Naval Academy, and so I was more familiar with the Navy as a service.
Okay. Now, when you went into the Navy, when did you enlist?
It was around the fall of 1973, I think it was.
43. Okay.
43, yes,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Okay. And where did you go for your basic training?
Well, as an officer.
Oh, you went to
training
officer.
at Northampton, Massachusetts. It was at Smith College.
Oh, you went to Smith College. Okay. All right.
And that's where the officers were trained.
All right. How long were you there?
I think I graduated in November. I think I went in September and graduated in November. And not to brag, but I was second in my class.
Oh, okay. All right. What kind of courses did you take while you were there? What did they give you?
Oh, I don't know. They just taught you about how the Navy works, you know, basically how the promotions and basically how the Navy works, how the officers progress and what they do and what choices there were. And
Now, what was your rank when you left?
ensign.
You're an ensign.
Everyone's graduated.
Right, okay.
graduated
Now,
in
did you
ensign.
get any kind of weapons training at all? How to fire a gun or anything?
Yeah, yes, we did get some of that.
Okay.
And was not as interested in that simply because my father had been a hunter and deer hunter, and so he had rifles in his apartment, in our apartment. We had, in other words, I was not unfamiliar with guns or uncomfortable with them.
Okay. After you graduated as an ensign, where did you go from there?
Well, we were assigned to different bases, and I was assigned to the Naval Research Lab at Anacostia.
What state was that in?
It's across the river from Washington.
Okay.
It's part of Washington.
I see.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what were your duties there?
At the Naval Research
Yes.
Lab. Well, we tested and developed because we had sonar equipment, and the Germans had it. And previously, the sonar equipment for submarines, which is limited, was limited, and we went into discovering, because the sonar equipment originally had metal tubes, different lengths of metal tubes, screwed into a stainless steel backing. And because the nickel was a scarce commodity in World War II in this country, we were growing and developing and cutting crystals which have the same properties, piezoelectric effect. You run a current through them and they vibrate. And that we thought that they could be used and cemented to the metal backing, the stainless steel backings, and used in place of the nickel. So that's what we did, and we did some work. 3M did some work on the cements for us, and we did the work on growing the crystals to cut and practicing cutting them and testing them in the equipment.
Now, these crystals were grown in a laboratory?
Yeah, and at the Naval Research Lab. Yeah. And we just grew the crystals, and basically it was like you were working in a lab, you know, except for the fact that you had to have a pass to get in, and I can show you that I have the ID I had, you know, it was pretty much a chemical job. And I remember that, as I tell them, when we were given our assignments, nobody wanted to, at Smith College, nobody wanted to go to Washington because they thought it would be Dullsville, and little did they know that it was loaded with single men.
Now, how many worked in your lab?
How many?
Yes.
In the lab itself?
Yes, where you worked in the lab, where you were doing these experiments.
Well, let's see. We had, well, right in the lab, particular lab, there were probably 6 or 8 people.
Now, were most of them men or women, or was it
they were
evenly?
basically men. Basically men. There were not many women at the Naval Research Lab.
Yeah, it must have been very few women had the degrees that you had.
Yeah, well, and
background.
It was interesting, you know, because there were some military people there, and we did our tour of duty and stayed down as a, you know, the officer of the day and stuff. But basically, we were in the lab. I was in the lab most of the time, and most of the other girls were too.
Now, what you were doing, was it considered highly classified and
Oh yes.
top secret?
Oh yeah, it was very, very, very highly classified.
Now, where did you live while you were working?
I lived at home.
That's right, you're from Washington. So you were allowed to live at home?
Yeah. And then I got money for transportation. I drove myself, and I got, because gas was rationed, it was a very limited supply, I had 5 passengers that I took to the lab with me, which helped me get gas.
So you owned your own automobile at that time?
Oh yeah, I still do.
Were you given any special allowances for meals or anything else since you were home, or did you?
I was given money for the transportation of the
Just the
people.
transportation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I had to serve. I had to be the officer of the day for the waves on the base once a month, and that meant staying down at the wave quarters and, you know, taking all the questions and answers and everything. And I can show you my
Now, how long did you?
ID.
What were your hours of work
We worked from 8 to 4.
8 to 4, so just a regular, like a regular
Yeah.
business day?
Right.
Mhm.
Now, when I was on duty at the wave, with the waves on the base, I was there for 24 hours.
Mhm.
And you were so-called officer of the day, so to speak.
Now, the pay you received, was it comparable to what you were making as a civilian? Wasn't
No.
as much?
Oh, no. No, it was not very much. But, you figured you had you got medical care and
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff, and you just figured it evened out in the end, so to speak.
Yeah.
Now, the experiments that you did, were they successful?
Well, I think so. They have been used.
Oh, so they did use
Oh,
the
yeah. Oh,
crystals and so on that you
Yeah.
developed?
Yeah, no, they've been used. And I just thought you might like to see it.
Yes.
Yeah, if you hold that up, I can zoom right in on it
Oh,
with the
okay.
camera.
Well, I have to get it first.
Now, did you, how many days a week did you work in the lab?
I work 5 days a week.
5 days a week?
Yeah, I work
Okay.
5 days. It was it was very interesting work, and it was work that I would do again. I could do it again. I mean, it was interesting work.
Mhm.
And there was always something new, and something came up, would come up, and we'd have to investigate how that might affect it.
Mhm.
And
Did you consider making the Navy a career at all, or?
well, I had applied to go to Pearl Harbor, because they had a nice, good base there, and it was interesting. And I thought it would be something to get out of the country, and they were sending people to Pearl at that time. And so I thought I would go. But then this man came home from Europe, whom I had been writing to, and it seemed as if maybe he was interested in my not going to Pearl. And I ultimately married him.
Now, was he an officer also?
Yeah, he was a captain in the Army. And he was well, obviously I thought he was a nice man. I married him. But there's my Navy ID. And he don't look like I do it now.
You're going to focus in that.
And it has my fingerprint on the back too.
Okay.
Oh, there it is.
Okay.
I just keep it just for fun.
Let me see that close.
Now, are there any other things you worked on strictly with the sonar and experiments with the sonar?
Yep, that's all I had.
Mhm.
That was all we did. Well, that was a lot. I mean, there was a lot of work involved, and we had to to check it all out. double check it and so forth.
Now, since you had been, pretty well educated, like George Washington and at Smith and so on, what was the equipment like that you were using? Was it pretty much up to date and?
Oh yeah, oh yes. The Naval Research Lab was an integral part of the Navy all the time, and it still is. And it's the equipment, we could get pretty much anything we wanted, we needed, because it had a lot of clout. So, but I think and I always felt that it was worthwhile. I know a lot of people said, oh, they didn't think you had to go in and service and all that kind of stuff, but in the first place, the thing that I think that you learn, that I learned, and I'm an only child, I was an only child, so the potential was good for me to be spoiled, it was there. I learned that you have to learn to do things for yourself, and how to do it on your own, and not depend on others to do things for you. And it seems to me that nowadays the kids want so much done for them and given them. And that's one thing that I learned was that, you don't just give kids everything. You make them stand up and earn it.
Now, were all those that worked in the lab officers?
No, there were a lot of Navy, just Navy.
Enlisted personnel?
No, they were civilians.
Oh, there were civilians. That was my next question.
They were mostly civilians.
Oh, okay.
Because they had this lab set up even before the Navy had gotten involved. I mean, as far as the sonar. And so that they had this lab, and they were basically, there was, in the lab that I worked, there was a man, a lieutenant, an older lieutenant, who was sort of overalls, and then he and I were the only ones.
Oh, that were Navy personnel.
We were only Navy personnel, the others were all civilians, who had worked there for years.
But they were all professional people.
Oh yeah, they were mostly chemists. A couple of physicists. But no, it was a very interesting job because I thought the lab was an interesting place to learn about the Navy. Well, I learned that about the RHIP, rank, habits, privileges, and that's what you learn, I think, basically.
Now, on this form you filled out, you said that basically the experiments you worked on led to ultrasound. Is that true?
That's true. Oh, yes, certainly. That's what it made it possible for them to make little heads.
So this led to ultrasound that has many applications then in medicine and so on today. Okay.
Since then.
So that's kind of a side effect from what you were working on at the time.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was not thought of at the time, but when they realized, when they got the crystals so that they worked, and actually sent out the sound, why, then I think it became, in fact, one of the civilians with whom I worked was one of the people who got it started ultrasound. He was a civilian.
Okay. Did you, being in Washington area, did you ever get to USO shows or any entertainment that was available for those in the service?
Oh, sure, you could go if you wanted to. there were plenty of other things to do.
For example, how did you spend your spare time when you were off duty? Did you have to wear your naval uniform all the time, or how much often did you wear it?
You were supposed to wear it all the time.
All the time? Okay. So you couldn't, when you went home,
Oh, at home I couldn't.
when you went out from home, you wore civilian dress or uniform?
Well, if I were going to something, you know, a big party or something, a cocktail party or something, I could get dressed up. But basically you wore your uniform.
While you were in Washington then during the war, do you recall how you felt when you found out that President Roosevelt had died?
Not really, I don't remember anything.
How about VE Day when you heard that?
Well, of course because this fellow that I knew was in Europe, I was happy to hear about that. And as I say, I was going out to Pearl. I had applied and was granted permission to go to Pearl when he came home. And so therefore I canceled that. He convinced me.
Now, when did you leave the service?
Well, I didn't actually leave it until, I kept coming to when I left there, you mean?
Yes.
When I left the
Were you discharged from the service?
Oh, well, I wasn't discharged, but I had leave. I was on leave, extended leave, and I got married. I was married in April of 64.
46.
46.
46?
46, I'll get it straight. And then I was on leave, and I was just on extended leave until I resigned.
And when did you resign from?
I didn't resign until, I think it was probably till let's see, 46, 40, probably close to 1950.
Okay. Why? Was there a reason, or?
Not really, but I had children quickly, and it just seemed, like I was not contributing anything, nor it to me. Either way, we were not contributing anything. It was not a lack of interest.
Right. Were there any parts of the GI Bill available for you that you could make use of the GI Bill at all?
I probably could have.
You never did?
I didn't, no. Let me see, did I? I don't think so.
You didn't go back to school after the war or anything?
No. Well, because I had the children so early,
Right.
because my first daughter was born. I was married in 46, and my first daughter was born in September of 47, and then my next one was born in November of 48, and the next one was born in October of 50. So the children were small, and I didn't have a lot of time to spend on. I was interested in the Navy and always have been.
Did you ever stay in contact with anyone that you worked with in the labs?
In the labs? I did stay in contact with one girl that I didn't work with, but I knew her in the lab, and I stayed in contact with her for many years. And we used to meet. She was from Boston, and when I was involved in Boston, I would see her, and I saw her quite frequently.
How do you think your time, I think you already have told us a little bit, but how do you think your time in the service had changed or affected your life?
Oh, I think it had a tremendous effect. I think it had an effect on my feelings about it, my feelings about how you should bring up children, how you should do, you know, a lot of things. It makes you realize that there's a lot that you can do, you personally can do, to control your life.
Do you think if you didn't work in these research labs in the Navy, you would have had those opportunities in the civilian world?
You mean to learn?
The same kind of opportunities of working on experimentation and so on, even though you had the college background? Do you think being in the Navy maybe opened some doors to things?
Oh, I think it did.
Mm-hmm.
I think it did, yes. I think it did. And I did find out later that if I had gone to Pearl, I would have had a lot of other opportunities. So for a while I was sorry I hadn't gone to Pearl, but not too much, you know. And then over the years you get over that.
Yes.
And bring up my own children and my grandchildren. So.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your interview.
Oh, my pleasure. I have I think it helped me bring up my children better because I have my youngest daughter's daughter is she was a cum laude graduate of Harvard and she's now at Penn Medical School. You know, so I think that it contributed a lot to my life. I always felt that it gave me a lot more guts, I guess, gumption. You know, I was not well, the only children that you see nowadays are very spoiled, and I always felt that this saved me from that, going in the Navy. Because they don't, you know, there's no excuse in the Navy, or at least then there wasn't. I don't know, I understand it's quite a bit different now.
Yes.
That's my understanding. I don't know what you found out, but it seems to me that
it's changed.
It's changed considerably, yes.
Us in the office, if anybody steals anything.
We're rolling.
Okay, this is an interview at the Elderwood Center, Hamburg, New York, 19th of April 2005, approximately 9:30 a.m.